Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. I wanted to start off this video by saying thank you to everyone who is watching my videos, or if you're one of my tens of subscribers. I just wanted to let you know I think it's really cool that you would take some of your time to come watch me. So your interest in what I create is, super heartwarming to me, and yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for being here. And what I wanted to do today was just talk a little bit about the choreography that's going to come right after this section of the video. Because something that I've learned as a contemporary dancer myself, and as someone who has a lot of conversations with people about contemporary dance, and all of my closest friends at the moment, well, almost all of my closest friends are contemporary dancers. Something that we talk about a lot is the fact that contemporary dance often is very vague to a lot of people, even to other artists, and even to lots of dancers. Like, it's kind of a taboo in a way, to kind of admit after you've sat down and watched a piece that you actually have no fucking clue what just happened. And it's no offense to any contemporary dance artist, but like, honestly, there are some pieces out there that I've seen myself where if I didn't have a description in the program, or if I didn't have somebody saying afterwards like explicitly what the piece was about, I would walk away from it and go, I don't know what just happened. Which, I mean, there is merit to artists that like to work in abstraction, where they like what they make to be vague to people and to have multiple interpretations and many different meanings. Like, I think it inspires a lot of work in other people, because you're not given this kind of like prescribed meaning for something, and you're able to look at a piece of art or a dance performance or a piece of music and kind of create your own meaning out of it, and then that can spawn your own ideas. So that's fantastic. But one thing I'm currently working with myself is a project all about creating dance pieces that are around climate change and around the kind of like era of history that humans find themselves in, but creating pieces that are from a hopeful perspective. Also, just as a side note, it's still really early in the morning, and there are a bunch of trucks just starting to drive by my house outside, so if you hear a bunch of strange street noises, that is why. You may also hear people walking outside and having conversations, so just fair warning. Yeah, back to what I was saying about I'm making a piece right now that's all about creating choreography about climate change from a hopeful, joyful perspective. And that may seem a bit like they're a bit opposed to each other, because when it comes to climate change, we've been told by a lot of news outlets, we've been told by a lot of celebrities, influencers, your mother, like lots of people talk about climate change in kind of doom and gloom terms, because I think that's what we've become used to. And there's a certain need for sobriety about the subject, because there's a lot going on that's very, very serious. But I think at the same time, there is a need for us to digest the information about where we're at, and then kind of step away from it. Like, we know that the situation is bad, we know it's kind of fucked, but also at the same time, there's room for looking at what we can constructively do in our own lives to make the situation better. I once, I think last summer, saw this piece by a dance artist where the kind of main like closing statement of her piece was, all we can do is love each other and die. And this piece was kind of about, I think it was about climate change, but it was also just about kind of the whole like movement of history, and how there's been so many atrocities and injustices in human history, and how do we cope with the fact that we are mortal beings and we have this one life, but there's so much about the world that is wrong and that we can't change, and that is horrible and staggering. So a lot of the time it does feel like all we can do is love each other and die. And I guess with my piece, I'm kind of looking at, you know, what does that loving each other and eventually dying look like? What does it look like to live a life where we don't turn our backs on the truth of the situation that we're in, but then we also feel like we can move forward and, you know, start creating things, start doing things that, you know, bring some amount of change to a situation. A thought process I've run into a lot when it comes to climate change is people kind of going, well, we're screwed, so what's the point? You know, what can we really do? Especially as individual people who don't have a lot of, you know, immediate power over a situation. Like, what's the point of doing anything? Isn't it just sort of like, you know, trying to fill the ocean with an eyedropper or something like that? And with this dance piece, I'm trying to kind of remind myself and hopefully remind audiences that see it that that there's still a reason to do what we can and to educate ourselves, be aware, and do what we can, but not with this sense of like hopelessness and not feeling bereft of the possibility of things being better. Anyway, that's my whole spiel about the overall piece, which is going to be about 10 minutes long, I'm hoping, and I'll be performing it for a small audience here in a couple months. But the short bit that is coming right after this, I think, is only like 3 minutes long. The way I created it was taking imagery about the Shannon River, which is a big part of where I live in Ireland, and it's so biodiverse, and it's such a large river that feeds so much of the country and then flows out into the ocean. So I was inspired by that sort of diversity and that sort of largeness and the magnificence of this body of water that goes from, you know, small streams to, you know, a rushing river and out into the body of water that feeds the entire earth. So I was thinking about that, and then I was also thinking about my heartbeat, and I was playing with movement that made me very aware of what my heartbeat feels like as I'm moving, because the whole project is called The Heartbeat of the Holocene. It kind of refers to the, I guess, the kind of dominance of human beings over the entirety of the earth, which we're seeing the effects of that. With climate change, we do see the, you know, sometimes very positive effects and sometimes very negative effects of humans kind of being the dominant species on the planet. And I think the main way to address the kind of ills we've caused on the earth, to sound a bit hippy-dippy, I think it all comes back to like going back to your heart, connecting with yourself, connecting with other people, realizing that though we're facing this huge problem, you know, we're not alone and we're not meant to deal with it in a vacuum apart from our communities, apart from a connection to ourselves, to our spiritual practices if we have one. I think the only way to tackle a huge issue like climate change that affects the entirety of humanity and generations going forward, the only way to do that is to go back to your heart. Save the world because you love it. And that sounds really like simple, and I think that's great because I think a lot of the time we start to save the world out of our fear or out of our opposition to other things, and then we start to forget about the love part. That's not to say, of course, that you know, art that is centered around activism, political activism, that's not to say that it's all supposed to be, you know, hippy-dippy, lovey-dovey. I think there is a time for righteous anger around making change in the world, and there's a time to raise your voice and be heard. But I think all of that needs to come out of a place of love for what we're fighting for, and I think that changes a lot. Anyway, I've rambled on for a very long time, but all of this was to just explain the little bit of choreography that comes next, because a lot of the time contemporary dance is pretty inexplicable and you don't know what's going on. And hopefully I've clarified that. The next little bit of movement is just me kind of exploring, you know, the feelings that I get from living near the Shannon and how beautiful it is, and what it feels like to connect to the fact that I'm a living person in this environment. I have this heartbeat that sometimes, you know, the sound of the river and my heartbeat to me kind of intertwine sonically a little bit. And then, I mean, this was also just to say hi to y'all for the first time, really. I used to post videos, like talkie videos on this channel a few years ago. I think back in like 2017, 2018 or something like that. And then I stopped posting talkie videos because I felt like I didn't really have much to say. Which isn't true. I mean, I've always had stuff to say. I'm a writer. You can see this is like my 15th journal. So I always have stuff to say. But I think I was waiting for a time where I had kind of gathered my sense of self and my training in my arts practice and everything, so that I would have a clearer idea of what I wanted to say to the world. Yeah, and I also just wanted to like really document this time where I'm creating this piece, kind of document where my thought process is at, so that, you know, in a few years' time I can look back on this video and just see where I was at and see where, you know, I hope to turn this piece into a much bigger ongoing project. So maybe in a few years I'll be able to see, you know, where this project came from. And yeah, so I'll wrap it up here. I will say one more thing though, one more thing. So I do have a Patreon, and, you know, I've had it for a while, but I haven't wanted to like plug it on my social media or anything like that, because, you know, I like to let what I create speak for itself as much as possible, and I don't like to, you know, seem like I'm just trying to get money from people, because that of course is never the goal, but a girl needs to eat as well. So I just wanted to let you know that there is a link for that in the description of this video. And if you'd like to join my Patreon, I would be ever so grateful. But you know, only if you feel led, only if you want to kind of support the work I'm doing now and the work I'm going to do in the future. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here and for watching my videos. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the choreography, and if you have any thoughts about anything I said in this video, feel free to leave a comment, and yeah, I will see you next time. Thank you.